We're going live now.
Yeah. Let's see.
Are we live now?
We should be live.
Oh, I think we're live already.
Hi guys.
Are we live?
We are live indeed, yes.
Oh, hello.
Hello. How are you guys?
Oh, guys, sorry, not our usual bubbly to navigate mood, as
That
you
is
can
true.
imagine. But
Yeah.
we're gonna give it a few minutes for more people to come in.
As usual, exactly. Hi
Oh,
everybody.
hello, everybody.
There's everybody coming in from Canada, Kenya. Brilliant. South Africa as well.
I feel like my eyes just going all over the place.
Well, I think especially for today's topic, it's great to even see such, so much diversity and
Yeah,
people from all over, really, from, all the way down south in South Africa, to all the way east Australia, the States, obviously,
yeah,
almost every European country. So that's definitely a good thing.
yeah. And guys,
Ghana.
sorry, if we look down, we're probably just looking at comments, questions as we go
True.
along.
Yes, very true. We also, maybe we should say that we don't have our usual bottle of wine open today
Yeah.
because, again, we have, just a glass of water. I
Cheers.
think- Cheers, yeah.
To
Cheers.
life
Cheers to
and
life.
equality.
Equality and love.
and love.
Very true. Yeah.
We felt like water was appropriate for this episode
Yeah.
to signify life and love,
Yeah, no, very true.
as opposed to celebration with wine, which is not really a celebratory mood.
Which hopefully one day, of course, we'll get back to for the live series, but at the moment is not the time.
Oh, for the live series.
Yeah, for the live series, I
Okay,
mean.
yeah, of course.
Ja, very true. Schweiz. Guten Abend aus Berlin. Guten Abend, Hauer. Ich hoffe, euch geht's gut in Berlin.
Yeah.
Schöne Grüße aus Germany. Very good. Heidelberg again. I've been seeing Heidelberg for every session so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city. It's a very famous city in Germany, actually.
Have I been?
You have not been to
No.
Heidelberg? Yeah, it's a great city.
What's the other one with all the famous flowers?
Famous flowers.
Lüneburger Heide.
Oh, that's yeah, you're right. That's a kind of an area. It's not a city, but
Oh,
it's an
it's not-
area.
it's
Yeah,
an
no,
area.
but you're right.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah. Very good.
Okay. Anyway, guys, can you, if you're here already, can you just give us a nudge if the volume is okay?
Yeah, it's true.
Can you hear us properly?
Yeah, please let us know. We
Let's see.
hope video and audio is okay for you. You can see us well.
Can people hear us properly?
Even Osnabrück. Yes, okay. Everybody's giving us a thumbs up. We can hear you. Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Volume is a little low. Okay. Well, I hope not too much. If there's,
Hello.
if there's any chance you can turn it up on your end, maybe. Okay, well, we'll try our best then to speak up. We obviously want to be a bit careful because the boys are sleeping. So
Exactly.
that's what we're also trying to not to be too,
Too loud.
too loud. But yeah, we'll try. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Should we start?
Yeah.
Should we give it a few more minutes for people?
And maybe 2 more.
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. I hope you guys are okay with that. We just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to tune in.
Yeah. Let's be mindful of the time because then we're gonna run over like
I know.
an hour.
I know.
Lord help me to not be triggered with this conversation.
No, but look, every minute is worth it though. At the end of the day, if this is I think on something like this, there's no, like if you're really obviously interested in this topic and passionate about it, which we are, and hopefully everybody who's tuning in obviously is, like, there's no time when it's ever enough to talk about it. So
Yeah, especially now, I guess.
yeah.
Okay, super.
Ludwigshafen, wow.
Should we go? Turn it on maybe.
Adanna looking fab. Oh yeah, she
Oh,
does.
thank you. Thanks.
She really does. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. First things first, thank you to everybody who's joined us on yet another episode of To Navigate, where we talk about navigating our way through life. And this is one of the things that we've had to navigate through
Yeah.
life together as a couple, racism. And in light of what's happening around the world, we felt it's time to speak up. So since we started, creating content online, specifically since 2014, we've intentionally avoided the interracial aspect of our relationship. Like, you can go back, there's been loads of opportunities to kind of put that in, to kind of get clout or whatever, but quite frankly, well, having heard the history of our relationship, it was based on a completely different foundation other than the thrill of marrying a white man or a black girl. So we've never really wanted that to be the focus of our relationship, and we've avoided it at all cost. However, it's actually just time to speak up. To speak up about my experiences as a black girl living in Europe alone, and then as a black girl married to a white man, and then also the experiences like we faced together as parents to two biracial children. So that's kind of what we're gonna talk about, specifically this video. I mean, one video is not enough to even to even talk about race and racism and the history of black people and all that. It's not. So we're gonna specifically limit this video to our experiences and go away with a few things, kind of a few advice depending on who's watching. I know for a fact that a lot of the people watching are black people, in which case you can already relate to the pain that we already face. We know from the statistics as well that most of our audience are black Americans. So I cannot even begin to imagine what you guys are going through in America, and my heart really goes out to you. But hopefully in this video we'll also touch on the few white people that are watching. Hopefully you're allies because I'm sure that's why you're tuning in, but just so that you can take something away from this video going forward. And
maybe just also to say up front, like, we obviously hope that all of you are overall fine. I mean, if we get to some questions at the end, we definitely want to engage with you again, but also our hearts and kind of thoughts and prayers are with all of you. I'm sure everybody is in one way or the other affected, or at least kind of touched by this, and has been thinking about this the last few days. They've been very emotional. So we just want to, before we get into our story, really just to say this as well, that we're thinking of you guys as well.
It's been really emotional for me. If you're following me on Instagram, you see my stories. I feel like I've been totally consumed with so much, I don't know, I would say negativity, even though I try not to overall create a negative atmosphere on my platform, to more go towards more of a positive approach. But it's so difficult when you look at the news, you look at everything, and you see what's happening to your people. It's so difficult. And for the first time, this is like it's like a worldwide movement. It's a global movement, because we've quite frankly had enough. Like, it's touched home. It doesn't even matter whether you're in the States or you're in the UK or you're in Germany or wherever. Like, I think every black person all around the world is feeling the pain of exactly what's happening, and myself included. I've not been able to sleep properly. I've been an absolute wreck. I just find myself like bursting out into tears randomly, and and it's only 2 days ago where I really reflected on how much of a toll this is taking on me, and intentionally decided to care for my mental health. And that's why there's a bit more of like positivity on my Instagram, and I'm taking more of the approach of supporting black people. I've created some templates, by the way. It's on my Instagram, Adanna_David. So check it out and support more black people. But that being said, I'm trying to be positive, and I know that it's very difficult. So,
but I think so. What I think we're gonna try really today, and we're gonna get into it right now, is there's so much we could talk about it in general about what's going on. But I think the best we can do probably is to share with you guys, as Adanna said earlier, like really what exactly she has gone through from everything I think you've been through, and then of course together as a couple. So that's really I think our biggest contribution, really, like share with you what we've done, how we've maybe faced this as well, and what we think we all can do differently.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just start with my experience, right? So my earliest experience of, I wouldn't even call it racism, right? So I was born in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria, and like Chimamanda, one of my idols, very eloquently put it, I did not recognize I was black until I left Nigeria. Because if you're living in a country where everyone looks like you, the problems you face have nothing to do with race. You can face so many other problems when it comes to like the economy and tribalism and all that. But it wasn't race on a scale that I've had to experience since coming to Europe. And I just remember I was still in high school when my mom's older brother's corpse arrived back home. So he was living in America, he was driving, and I think he pulled up to a traffic light, just minding his business, and this 18-year-old white kid shot him. He didn't die on the spot. He was rushed to hospital, and from the reports that we got eventually, because there was a lot of lawyers involved and all that, his care wasn't managed appropriately, perhaps also because he was black. And this was over a decade ago. So I can imagine that if we're in 2020, you're still facing the sort of racism that you're facing. I wonder what it was like over a decade ago. But anyway, his care wasn't managed appropriately. He died. And all of my mom's family being in Nigeria, they sued the hospital for negligence. They sued the teenage boy. Apparently he was too young to go to prison. So he was sent to juvenile detention, and eventually he was let go. So the story didn't really make sense to me. For two reasons. I would say maybe because of my age, probably. I wasn't even that young, quite frankly. I wasn't even that young. But secondly, because, as I said to you, being in Nigeria, I didn't really think about it on a scale of racial violence. Because I just said, he was shot by someone, and it could have just been a crime rather than the reason why that crime was committed. So it's one of those things that, I remember on the day of the funeral, like, it took lots of people to hold my mom's sisters down, because especially one of the ones, and my mom and one of her sisters were really close to him, and they almost jumped into the grave. That's how sad and heartbreaking it was, and we all witnessed it at that point. And I was still in Nigeria, I was still in school, so I hadn't even left to come to Europe, or to come to England, let's just say. Anyway, so that was my first experience, or like, now that it's kind of all bubbled up to the surface, is like one of my earliest experience of like racial kind of violence. Anyway, I came to England. I came with my twin sister, and then we very quickly joined the Afro-Caribbean Society. We made a lot of friends. So I would really say that was a very good protective bubble for me, because it was a safe space, because I had my twin sister, we had our best friend, we had all the friends from the Afro-Caribbean Society, and it was a safe space. Like I said, like coming and seeing people that look like you, I didn't really experience any racism. I was fortunate to meet David because you were part of the Afro-Caribbean Society. Of course. So like, you almost joined in, like, for
your
better,
circle.
you joined my circle, and that's how I met you.
It is what it is.
I probably wouldn't have met you otherwise. So you joined my circle, and I mean, we connected on a level that was different from just meeting an international person. Like, you had this experience in Africa, you knew the song, the
Well,
music.
you knew a lot of the guys in the groups who were kind of hanging out. I wasn't just randomly standing
You
there
weren't just
awkwardly in the corner.
exactly.
You know?
So you almost also connected in my culture, and that's kind of how we, became friends.
Yeah.
So I was still in my bubble, let's just say. Okay, so fast forward, I finished my first degree in England, and then I came to med school. So I went to the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. RCSI prides itself with over 60 nationalities. Most of my friends were Arabs, were, black people. So I also was in another protected bubble. And now, obviously, I've had to think back at experiences to recognize that was actually racism, that was microaggression, but in the moment I didn't actually get it. So of course, now that I think about it retrospectively, I would have experienced microaggressions and subtle acts of racism even in England. But a Nigerian girl who didn't even recognize she was black, I'm sorry, I can't even understand why you're treating me that way. You're just not a nice person. That's kind of how I concluded it to be, rather than at the time, rather than you're treating me that way because of my race. Anyway, now when I truly started experiencing racism was after I graduated medical school, and I had to work in a hospital. So I graduated, all of my friends had gone back to all of their 60 different countries. And I stayed back, and I was kind of thrown into this all-white clinical setting. And it was the first, okay, so my experience is the very thing that really stood out was the fact that people found it very difficult to acknowledge me as a doctor.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the patients will call me a cleaner. I was, at best, I was a nurse, which is fine to be a nurse, right? No problem. But I was a cleaner most of the time. Well, like, I would go in my... Go on.
No, sorry. But I also find it so additional strange, because I remember those nights when you came home, right? Obviously being very emotional. Like, you were wearing your coat. You're wearing your stethoscope around your neck, which is a sign normally that you are a doctor. Yeah. And still, people would not see that very obvious signal. Yeah. But the signal of your skin is stronger than the signal of your clothes, and therefore you have a stethoscope as a cleaner or what? Since when? Yeah, exactly. Since when do cleaners walk around in stethoscopes?
I don't know. So I'm thinking, when do cleaners walk around in scrubs and stethoscope? Like, I really don't understand that. And I would have patients telling me, I want to see the real doctor. Go call me the real doctor. And I'm thinking, excuse me, I am a real doctor, and I'm your doctor. Like, especially as an intern.
Studied 10 years in uni, man.
Yeah, especially as a doctor or like as an intern or as a senior house officer, where you have the most junior member of the team. So you're the first point of call. Like, you go, you examine the patient, you take a history, do an exam, order all the tests. And if it's something above your expertise or whatever, then you have to then call your registrar or your consultant. So at the very grassroots junior doctor level, where the patients are refusing for me to even speak to me because I'm a black woman. I mean, no other reason. No other reason. I want to see the real doctor. Go. And I would, like David said, I would come back, feel very emotional, because I mean, I know how hard I work to be a doctor. And I'll be, berated to a cleaning staff. Nothing also is wrong with it being a cleaning staff. It's just when you know that you should be valued for the position you're in and you're not, it's actually very painful because of the color of your skin. So this is something that kind of I experienced all through I practiced medicine. All through I practiced medicine, it didn't stop. But I kind of learned to have a tough skin around it, right? And at the end of the day, who are you gonna address it to, really? Like, the acts of racism I experienced were the ones that when you actually repeat it back to somebody else, it would really take someone who's clued in, someone who understands white privilege, someone who understands racism to be like, actually, this was a sort of act of racism. But when everybody else looks like the people who are committing the crime, I'm sorry, I didn't have my audience there to listen to me, so I kind of took it in, tough skin and all that. That's fine. But then, over time, where I would have experiences like, okay, I remember vividly one of the times that we were gonna change the car. I think we were preparing to, when the kids were coming, and we were gonna look to buy a bigger car for the size. And we'd look through, decided what car we wanted to get. I called the
dealership.
the dealership, and I said to them, "Oh, I'd like to book a test drive." And I suppose anyway, I like to book a test drive, and we made an appointment. He said, "Yes, you can book a test drive." Yada yada yada. I arrived at the dealership at the date that was agreed. And of course, he didn't expect to see a black woman. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm looking for whatever his name was." I was like, "Oh, I rang you on the phone about the test drive." And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, we have no cars to be test driven." I'm like, "Excuse me, I don't understand. Like, we made an appointment. I rang you before I came here. I'm here now. Like, what do you mean?"
Yeah, how's that possible?
How is that possible that the car you said was available for me to test drive is no longer available? And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's no car to test drive." I mean, what else is the reason for him to tell me that? Like, what else was the reason?
Well, he did. Maybe sometimes there might be a reason, but he didn't give you any. So, like, what are you left to believe then, right?
No, of
On the
course.
phone, everything was agreed. He knew the date. I mean, if there was an issue with supply or something of cars, I mean, first of all, he could have told you then.
Customer service
He
would
could-
ring me to say
exactly.
that
He could have
guy's
called
name.
you then, like, "Oh, sorry, ma'am, like tomorrow, whatever. It's not going to work or something, right?" But it's just, it's just ridiculous.
So apparently the car wasn't available anymore, and he sized me up. Probably thought, well, this black girl can't afford to buy any car, so I'm not even gonna waste my time giving her anything to test drive. So goodbye.
Yeah.
And I came back, and I said that to David, and of course David obviously put himself forward, and we ended up getting the car. So what does that tell me? What does that tell me? And that's exactly what I was trying to say in my stories, right? Over time, you second guess everything. You second guess yourself. You question everything. And of course, there might be situations where it probably genuinely has nothing to do with your race. But because of the years of the experiences that you've gone through, you always sit back to ask yourself, did they do this because I'm black?
Yeah.
And it's
That
just
has a
so...
real psychological impact. I mean,
It
that's
does,
incredible.
if that happens over years, you know?
I think for me, really, one of the other very memorable, in a negative, obviously, way, right, moments that stuck with me was one particular GP visit, actually.
Oh, that's obviously, that's later. That's when we had the kids,
Right,
right?
okay,
So I'm
yeah,
coming
yeah.
to that.
Okay.
Another experience. No, so I've kind of briefly just touched what I experienced before as a single girl, before we got married. No, we had gotten married before I started practicing medicine. But then the experiences of when we wanted to move house.
Yo.
Oh my God, please.
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's very similar to the story with the car, right? Just the fact that when either we both show up, or let alone, Adanna would show up to view a house, for example, right? Again, the same kind of like, but the like sentences that I just have personally never heard. Somebody reiterating to you during a viewing, you are aware that the price is X, and you're like,
I saw that online before I came here.
I mean, look, please, if there's any white person out there whoever has experience, I've never experienced anybody asking me like if I actually am aware of the cost of something. Let's just put it like that, right? So house viewing was another example. Whether rental, buying, whatever, like, several instances like, oh, but are you sure you'll be able to, like, you will have, it's 2 months of whatever, like deposits, like just these kind of little things. I mean, there's no need, and normally you wouldn't see that somebody being so kind of, kind of trying to make sure like, oh, but you are aware that this, and like, yeah, of course, I know this is not the first house we're buying or the first house we're renting. Or,
literally, it got so bad because I think based on maybe David's schedule, at some point he wasn't available to view houses, and so I was the one championing it, right? Because no matter how much people have chipped away at me, I really I fail to be overpowered. I still believe in my strengths and my power and my achievements and my confidence. So they'll knock me down and I'll pick myself back up again.
Yeah.
And I picked myself up from other experiences, and then it was house viewing and house after house after house. And after you view it, you go back and literally less than 24 hours, they tell you that house is not available. And the next week, you look online and that house is still listed. Yeah. At some point, literally, as painful as this sounds, David and I sat down and I said to him, babe, I will no longer go for the house viewings. If you really want us to move in a timely manner, you better make time from work to go view these properties yourself.
So let's just say the last few houses, especially the last houses we moved to, or house, whatever, was me showing up to the viewing alone, but saying, of course, we have a family with 2 kids. And then sending kind of Adanna was live pictures,
literally.
You know. And of course, if I tell the man or lady, like, oh yeah, no, I'm just sending my wife pictures. Of course, they're like, oh yeah, no, please do anything you want, you know. I don't know what they would have said if they knew, like, you know, that Adanna was black. You know, it's sad, of course, to say that, but you know, so that were my last. I don't know how many it took in the end, but like that was the house viewings. I would show up alone, live almost stream if you want in a way, right? Live send Adanna pictures all the time. Hey, look, this is the kitchen, the bathroom.
And I was completely available to attend those appointments. But I'm like, you know what? When I think about like dealing with a racist bigot versus the time that we need to actually move out of our old property, I would rather just step back. Let's just complete the it sounds very sad and pathetic. And I do recognize, can you just imagine if we were both like a black couple? Can you just imagine that then? Yeah. Like, sorry, who's the white person that's going to go forwards? Can you imagine how painful that realization is?
Through a lot of those moments, absolutely.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Anyway, we finally moved in, you know, because David championed the viewings. And that's kind of the way that we've navigated some of these racist situations. Yeah. You know?
Which is sad, but that's, you know.
Yeah. And then, okay, most recently, this year. This year, we went. Do you want to give the GP story?
Oh, the GP story, yeah, of course.
The hospital story with Kian.
Yeah. So we went for a doctor's appointment with Kian, the 2 of us. You know, Noah was in school. We took Kian out to go with him to the appointment. And I think, I don't know, I was driving, I parked the car or something. You kind of went slightly ahead with Kian.
No, I'll give you my experience because since it was me, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I walked in, but go for it. Say what exactly happened.
No, so what happened was, so David, it wasn't our regular GP. It was a different, you know, GP appointment with Kian. And this happened this year, by the way. This is how recent this is. So David was locking the car and I said, okay, you know, take your time, bring Kian out, lock the car. I'm going to go in and find out where exactly in this building we need to go for this appointment. I go into the receptionist and I'm like, oh, hello, excuse me. She looks up and and the first thing she said to me was, you sit down there. I was like, but you don't even know why I'm here. She's like, sit down there, please. So I respect myself and I go sit down. And I'm sitting at this reception. David and Kian, they come, they join me. He's like, oh, babe, why are you here? Are we supposed to be here? I was like, well, I don't know where we're supposed to be because I've tried to have a chat with this receptionist and she said to me, sit down here. So we were sitting, and then there was also a small dental room. The dentist came out and was like, are you waiting for me? And I was like, no, we're not even here to see a dentist. Like, why are we even sitting in the dental area? We're not even here for a dental appointment. So we sat down there for about 20 minutes and I said to David, literally, I was so upset. And I said to David, please go to the receptionist and ask her where exactly we need to go for this appointment, because I know in my heart that as a white man, she's going to listen to you. David gets up with Kian. He goes to her and he's like, excuse me, we're here for so. She looks up. She's like, oh, hello. Okay, I'll take you to the appointment. Well, she gets up from a table. What?
No, well, yeah, I mean, you're completely right. Yeah, she was completely different, turned around, stopped what she was doing, basically, attended to me, looked at me, said, we're here for so-and-so, you know, like, oh, that's perfect. You're just going down the aisle there on the left side, the right door, the third door or something, you know.
She took
I was like,
and then...
So why didn't you tell us earlier? Like, we were just sitting down the random chair in the
Literally,
corner.
I was like, we were not even sat where we were supposed to be.
No. And there was nobody in that doctor's office. That doctor was available, free. We could have
Waiting
seen her
for
like
us.
half an hour earlier,
And then I looked at David, because with all these experiences, like I say it to him, and although I know David is our number one ally, right? You can never know how the shoe hurts until you have your foot in it. So no matter what, I do not expect, and it's the same way I suppose with all of the white people we're trying to educate at the moment, you can never really know where it pains you the most, and that's why you can never trivialize someone's experience in the way that especially with the way that it made them feel. Because I look at David and I was like, David, how is this happening? How? I'm a freaking doctor. Like, our position in the healthcare system, I would rank 10 people above this receptionist who would not even give me the light of day because of my skin color. Like, how painful is that? And what else can you do besides, babe, I'm sorry, how it made you feel? But it doesn't really change the racism.
Yeah. And of course, those are the moments, to be very honest, kind of a lot of things that we've together, of course, we talked a lot almost every evening or every night, in the last few days, and myself was thinking about it. Of course, thinking back at a lot of those moments, you wonder, okay, should I then follow up and say like, okay, excuse me, but why didn't you tell my wife? And there are certainly moments when I've done this or tried to do it at least to kind of bring this to somebody's attention, right? But in that moment, for example, we were here with Keen, number one, you kind of don't necessarily at least want to make a scene. Now, on the other hand, also, I was like, we already missed half an hour seeing the doctor, we needed to really see her quickly. So looking back, of course, I wish I had said something or asked her a question, because she, in her view, right, and we might get into this in a little bit or so, but like on a more general note, but in her view, maybe she, even if you would ask her, for example, like she wouldn't have even noticed it. It's those kind of unconscious elements that of course exist. They're not bad. They're not any better, by the way, or any worse than intentional racism, right? They could even sometimes be even worse, right? But like it might not have even she might not have even been aware of it. So
aware of what?
Her behavior, what she's actually done. For her, this might have just been, so that's why, for example, highlighting
subconscious.
Yeah, subconscious. Right?
Yeah, I know subconscious because it's ingrained, but I'm not gonna take she doesn't know what she's doing.
No, but when you ask her, it's one of those things. When you ask her, I think we talked about this when I said like people sometimes don't make connections between the different points of like they'll say, oh no, of course I'm not a racist. I know I completely but then some of the stuff they do and say and the way they behave to people, they don't even realize that they have this subconscious mentality already of perceiving people different and acting to them differently. So in that moment, for example, I wish now and even before, of course, that I'd said something.
No, but you know what happened? Don't you remember when we got there and
Yeah, you did.
I'm not taking this. I'm going back and giving this woman.
I wish I had said something.
Okay.
It should have been me as well.
Yeah, David is like,
I wish I said something.
Oh, I was like, I'm going back, David. I cannot tolerate this. I cannot.
She did.
And I went back, and oh my goodness, she was not sat there anymore.
Yeah.
She was not there anymore. Oh, is it gone? What's happened?
Oh, that's okay. Hold on 1 second. Go on.
Anyway, she wasn't sitting there anymore, and I was saying to myself, like, literally, God has saved you from the venom I was literally about to regurgitate on you. Like, I don't even care. Oh my God, I was so annoyed because at some point, like, you take and you take and you take and you tolerate all these things, and at some point it just gets so much. I don't think are we still live though? Oh, they said they can't see us.
There we go.
Are we back, guys?
Yes, we are back. Sorry, guys, about that. Little technical glitch.
Okay. Anyway, so I went back to give her the peace of my mind, and she was no longer sat at the reception desk anymore. But yeah. I was like, oh, God has saved you, woman.
But as I said, this is one of those moments of truths, if you want, right? As an ally for any topic, but in this case specifically as a white person, right? Truly believing and hoping to be a very, very strong ally wherever I can. Those are the moments that, looking back now, and as much as there were a lot of moments where I think I've done the right thing, but yeah, I really wish I had stood up more in the moment, because again, when we came back afterwards, she was gone. So
yeah,
but yeah, that was pretty.
There's so much. I mean, can we even talk about recent? So now, in light of COVID and business expansion grants. Like at the moment, I'm currently working on one of the biggest expansion grants I need for my business. And time and time again, I've had to set aside my experience as an entrepreneur, my experience as a doctor, my experience in business, my knowledge and everything to put David forward in this application. So even though obviously like we're co-founders of the company, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm actually more suited to put my name into this application. But we go back and forth and we decided, well, you know what, we're going to put David's name because he's a white man. And we have a greater chance of this grant being approved because it's a white man on the application rather than a black woman. And that is it's so sad and it's so pathetic. And at some point you realize, okay, I suppose the wisdom is knowing what battles you can fight and when to fight the battles. Because let's talk about the grant. Yes, I can be like, you know what, I don't care. I have the experience. I have the expertise. I'm going to put my name forward. But when I question, do I really want this grant? And who are the people that are actually going to approve the application? I'm not going to have the time to chat to them face to face to explain all of my abilities, right? So in which case, this is not the time to fight this battle. And,
absolutely.
But having experiences like this in a very structural way that really takes away from all of your accomplishments and your achievements, but only focuses on your skin color is quite frankly exhausting.
Of course.
It's mentally draining.
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Anyway.
On a more general note, let's say, a lot of very interesting conversations that I thought at least were around, that I've seen happening in different ways, of course, is very, very good points and very important points around kind of, silence is complicity. I think this is, for me, you mentioned this in the beginning, something is a bit different this time. It feels, yes, this has not been kind of what happened just over a week ago now on last week, Monday, right? Obviously, unfortunately, has not been the first time in the States or in a lot of other places, right? But there is something is a little bit different this time, I feel, right? And yes, it's about people just being even louder than before. And also what I really like generally, as obviously a white man, is like more people holding white people to account. Yes, acknowledging, well, look, a lot of people are saying, yes, they're not racist. They're completely supporting the cause. And I'm an optimistic person that knows this, I was a glass half full kind of guy. So I strongly believe the majority of people in the world, I'm hoping, are not racist. That's my personal hope, okay? But what I like about the time right now in the last few days is like a lot of people saying, okay, if that's really the case, then prove it and show it. Don't just kind of say it when you're asked. We don't always want to ask for support. People should have an inherent interest and desire to make the society a better place and a more equal place predominantly, right? So then do something about it. So a lot of questions at work as well, by the way, I'm going to be very honest, which, look, you can say some of the questions people ask when we're like, okay, really? Like, where have you been the last 500 years? But okay, at least they're trying, right? And I like that fact, at least, that people are really asking me straight up. So as a white person, between us, like, what can I actually do? Right? So we have to start somewhere, right? You can't expect everybody to be like on perfect kind of level of understanding and context on every topic in the world. But I love the fact that more so than ever, I've never seen that kind of level of interest, mention, questions being asked, around specifically. And I think this is one of the key messages. You don't need to tell a black person to be behind Black Lives Matter, for example. Or, that's not the point. But where I think that the real change can be made if way more people than just black people would fight that cause. It's like fighting women equality. You can't just ask only women to make a difference to change the life of women. And as sad as it sounds, because it's the men who are causing the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's white people, predominantly anyway, who have over the decades and centuries, and right now, are causing the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can we change things if not really making it clear and being very vocal about what actually all of us white people, and again, I'm learning to not have such a big problem even saying this, which is weird in itself, by the way. I made a comment on Instagram, actually, one of my posts, saying, when you think about it, really is staggering how for black people, the word black and this race element is so ingrained in their identity, right?
Yeah.
It carries so much weight. Unfortunately, of course, a lot of history and a lot of pain. But for some reason, white people don't feel the need or have no kind of, no, I don't rather not say this, or no, I don't consider white, Caucasian, like, or even that people don't like to use. It's just like, no, there's nothing about it. But that fact alone, the fact that white people don't think their skin color even carries anything, is the definition of white privilege.
Yes, because
Does that make
they've
sense?
created the construct that obviously does not benefit black people.
So
that's why it's okay for them to say the word black, or even privately, or for black people to even use the word black, because we're using that as a term to describe our identity, to bring forward our history, to express our pain, our emotion.
Yeah.
And
white people just frankly haven't felt that as a race. Yes, there are all sorts of wars in the world and dramas, yes, but never has there been a situation where because somebody was because of the race white, they were suffering. But as I said, people have to acknowledge that being white, the fact that you are white actually means something. And what I mean by that, obviously, not in a way oh, you're better. Of course not. The complete opposite. We need to be aware that there is a difference in the way the world treats us because we're freaking white. Yeah. And I don't feel personally there's any problem of saying that. Right? We need to acknowledge it and talk about it. It's not a bad. I know there's some white people who feel no, you can't say that, black, white. But honestly, I think we're at a point where I don't think we're over that, because if we don't address that and talk about it that way, it's hard to actually make that. I think that there was one really video, I think you posted on your stories, by the way, that I think for me was so powerful. We might leave a link in the description or something. Maybe you've seen it, where I think it's a sport team or something, a coach asking the team basically, look, if anything that I'm going to say now applies to you, please step forward. And then ultimately, of course, there was a lot of things that were most of the white members, privileges, where a lot of the white members were stepping forward. And unfortunately, of course, a lot of the black team members didn't. Yeah. And then he said, okay, now we're going to have a race for $100, right? And obviously, most of the white folks were already halfway through.
Yeah, because your privilege gives you a head start in life.
It was so powerful. And that's the whole point. If you don't acknowledge that because you're white, there are advantages to you in life, I don't think we're ever going to get a real kind of full, movement or whatever, body of change.
Yeah, and that's why when you hear all the people saying, well, all lives matter, when we're trying to channel Black Lives Matter, and I'm like, do you actually understand the difference between equality and equity? Because we're not even starting on the same level playing field. You already have 5 steps ahead of you because of your skin color, which you do not face any prejudice. You don't have to think twice about putting your name on a grant application. You don't have to think twice about putting your name as a viewer for a rental property, or for a car that you want to test drive, or for the school that you want to send your school to. You do not have to think about that. So when we're channeling Black Lives Matter, we're starting from 10 steps behind, trying to amplify our voices to meet up. So all lives matter, but not now. Not now. Right now, Black Lives Matter. And if you are white and you consider yourself an ally, maybe it's time to actually sit and think. Think about it, and think about educating yourself, because that's really the first place to start. Yeah. I was talking about with white people who are like, oh, I'm too uncomfortable with this, or they wouldn't really say. Their inactions highlights the fact that they're uncomfortable with being vocal, but you can't really call yourself a friend. Oh my God, the amount of friends I've had to unfriend in the last week. And Dad is like, maybe you're overreacting, or maybe they didn't really think that way. And I'm like, no, quite frankly, if you're a white friend who doesn't understand my pain in this moment and can't really take the time to educate yourself, I actually have I have no business being the one to educate you.
And let me also even share or add a point that even exemplifies or exaggerates that point, why it's so important, is even for me, and obviously we know each other now for a long time, we've been married for several years, right? We've obviously, as we just described, experienced even some of these things I witnessed myself and saw, right? Let alone some of the stares, but that's almost, we're over that already. But for me, even even though we've been together for so long, and I know, of course, a lot of the stories, even when we didn't know each other yet, you told me a lot of the stories. Even for me, there's a constant learning curve of how much actually over time it affected you emotionally, right?
Yeah, of
because
course.
Another very interesting part of the conversations that I had in the last few days was around kind of, well, I obviously, I understand a lot of the history. I've even read some books, like, people who generally have a fairly good understanding of like the background, the history, the context, really, and yet they really fail that last step of, and look, even as I said, I'm still on a learning curve. I can never actually get to a point where I can relate to it, because if you're not black, you can't, okay? Yeah. But you can try and get as close as possible, of course. So there's still a big gap in understanding of between the let's say the facts, right? Facts are facts. That's facts. Yeah. The things that happened, all these are facts, but how much this affects an individual person emotionally over time, and then why this then translates ultimately after decades, and again, historically speaking, for hundreds of years, in this kind of like outcry. I can't describe it otherwise, and kind of real anger and frustration. And a lot of people still, very, very supportive people, by the way, and I want to say this and be very clear, right? But they just fail to understand that last emotional aspect. You cannot understand this unless you actually engage in conversations with people, in open conversation, ask them, let them share with you the kind of, I always find it very powerful when Adanna talks about it, or even shares it with me, in a slightly more extreme way, of course, and kind of, you know what I mean? Not as kind of toned down as today, but I find it very powerful. I believe for years I was a very kind of supportive person, and I'm, always 100% Black Lives Matter and stuff. But sometimes even I catch myself like, oh, flip, like listening to you, like, oh, Jesus, like, I didn't even, like,
you couldn't really connect.
I couldn't really connect on the complete emotional level. So that is a big gap that people need to feel.
Yeah, so it starts. So if you're white, wondering where to start, it's with educating yourself first. Educating yourself first, because these resources are free and they're going viral right now. Yeah. 2, engaging in conversations with people intentionally. Like, I've had a couple of people reach out to me, and you know what? If you're reaching out to me at a time like this, like, there's some things you shouldn't be saying. There's something, like, maybe start with, how are you feeling? I can see what's happening. Are you okay? Rather than, do you want to meet up for a drink? Do you want to meet up for coffee? I'm sorry, I do not want to meet up for drink or coffee. I don't, because like I cannot even, like, I'm too emotional to meet up for a drink and coffee. Or like, I've had a dialogue with someone like, oh, how are you, Adanna? And I'm thinking like, how are you means I can see what you're going through. I know what's happening in the world. And I'm saying, well, I'm quite frankly not feeling good, not feeling okay. And the next thing is, oh, is it because of COVID? But babes, don't worry, like, lockdown it's being eased off soon.
Being over, yeah.
And I'm just like, from today onwards, we are no longer friends. Because if you really think COVID is my problem right now, that black people are being killed left, right, and center, then we have no business interacting. We have no business interacting. And I'm not even, I do not care saying that. I literally don't care.
Yeah. I mean, we've actually, so if it's obviously of interest to anybody, you've certainly shared a lot of stuff, a lot of resources, the templates, list of books to read. We can see, maybe we might leave some of them also maybe in the description box below on the video, of course. I think it's about the conversations. It's about, really kind of digging deep into it, understanding, deep-rooted issues, really, for white people, certainly understanding the emotional side, realizing, recognizing some of the things that we benefit from unknowingly, at least to us unknowingly, right? That's super important, just knowing that. And another thing for me was very big as well, is just like trying wherever we can, and I know it's not going to be always possible, but like to stand up and just say something. These are, I described them, I think, in my post as sort of micro moments, and you might think, oh, hey, if I say something now on this train ride, I'm here, and somebody's being kind of, in one way or the other, being slightly, treated in a way you're like, that shouldn't happen, or probably wouldn't happen to me. Say something, because yes, it might look like a minor thing, but ultimately, a lot of those micro moments, out of a lot of people standing up, will ultimately create macro moments or macro movements that then feed into the bigger piece.
Into the bigger piece.
So
yeah.
honestly, small little steps wherever you see it, do it.
Yeah,
it will make a difference.
It's just hard when I also just think about the notion of the angry black person, mostly angry black woman or angry black man. Like now, I do recognize how emotional I am now. And when we were, you know, gonna start the video, I thought to myself, I tried to not bring in this emotion, but it's very difficult because I'm a human being. And like, if you're somebody who's never had to face this level of prejudice, or you've never been confronted with your race, take a moment to understand why people are angry, why we feel like we need to confront what you've actually just said. I mean, David, you know the amount of racist jokes that I have unfortunately been in the center of.
Yeah.
And like when I try to be like, oh honey, that's actually not funny. I look like, I mean, I'll give you some. I've been in a room where people thought it was hilarious to talk about the way black people were created. And this man said, oh, you know what? When God created black people, he asked them to put their hand on a wall and he sprayed them with a color, and he clearly forgot to spray their palm, and that's why their palm is a different color from their skin.
Actually, so yeah, that's correct. Actually, so that somebody asked, so there's a black person on the table, to be fair, right? There's a black person at the table, not you.
Yeah.
And another person, a white person, asked him, you know, so how come the palms are actually white?
Yeah.
So, right?
Yeah.
So then...
And then he...
jokingly, that black person then actually told that story.
No, it's not the black person that told the story. It's the white person.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So why... How?
Okay, all right.
David,
yeah.
How did the black person tell this story? It's a racist joke.
Okay, no, my understanding is he actually told the story to make fun of him. Because it was a very stupid question.
No, he made the joke. That's what triggered me. He was the white person was the person who made that joke.
Okay.
I've also been on a table, which you are aware of, somebody describing where they met their neighbors in the middle of the night, and oh my God, they wouldn't have even recognized that their neighbors were there if not for when they smiled and they saw the teeth and they realized that there was a person in the dark. And obviously, when I say that that's not funny, I then come across like overreacting. But how can I not overreact? Like, that is not freaking funny.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. But anyway, these are the things that kind of make us look very angry, because if you would just never really understand how it feels to be at the receiving end of stupidity, quite frankly. It's just really, really triggering. So if you start with basic education, conversations, no matter how uncomfortable it is, and then support, because I'm looking around at everybody who's ever claimed to be a friend, and you might think, well, I have 100 followers, 200 followers, what's it gonna matter? But maybe we're fortunate that I might be one of your only black friends, and the other 400 people that follow you on Instagram are all white. Like, you advocating, you putting up a post, you talking about it, or you enlightening them is going to make a difference, because then they also feel uncomfortable. If they feel like their white friend is talking about these things, they feel uncomfortable.
Especially in real life, though. That's, I think, really where you can make a real difference for everybody.
And I was having a conversation with someone about this, and I said, you cannot underestimate the power of putting that one post on social media. And I'm not even talking about everybody who jumped on the bandwagon of black screens. Like, you see most people who had said nothing for a whole week, and all of a sudden there's a black screen, and of course it's the easiest thing to put on your feed. But for people who meant it genuinely, thank you. But for the others, you cannot, like, the advocacy online, on social media, where a lot of people are at the moment, you can't really underestimate the power of saying something on your platform, no matter how little it is. I think about it as little drops of water make a mighty ocean, but you need drops and drops and drops. And that post you might put up that makes your 5 white friends uncomfortable, that is the drop of water that we need to eventually come to a place of equality, where black people are considered equal, considered humans, their achievements are considered, and instead of their skin color first. You know, so everybody needs, it's all hands on deck. I don't care whether you think it affects you or it doesn't. Right now, it's an issue of humanity, and all hands need to be on deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Anyway.
as we said in the very beginning, this even though we've now almost hit an hour, it is
What do you
still
mean we've
not
almost hit an hour?
we almost hit an hour, guys.
Oh my god. Okay.
It is obviously still not enough time to talk about everything. But yeah, look, we obviously just wanted to use this opportunity, to kind of share with you that yes, the last few days and a week or so, have obviously not been easy for us too. A lot of emotions come up, and we wanted to use today really to kind of share at least some of our thoughts, and also I think share experiences that we've never really shared before, intentionally at the time, I think for the right reasons, but I think now is the time for to kind of to let everything kind of all barriers down in a way, and kind of share with you what we have gone through, and it's predominantly of course Adanna.
Yeah.
But look, I think with that in mind, look, we will be obviously watching very closely, trust us, every day, everything that is happening, right? Who knows what the next few days and weeks will bring? Hopefully, this is not one of those things that just die down. But I'm very, very optimistic. From everything we've seen the last week, this seems to be different. So we'll be watching it. Maybe we'll come back to address something depending on I think how this plays out, and if our thoughts obviously maybe we have some extra thoughts. But for now, we'll thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
And please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And make sure, obviously, well, for those of you who haven't yet left a comment, make sure you leave a comment. Like the video. And the reason, guys, we're smiling, I'm very sorry that we're a little bit distracted, but somebody has just walked into the door.
For the first time, guys, every time we sit down to navigate, we're like, oh, we hope Kian doesn't wake up. He's actually woken up.
Kian has just woken up. Kian, do you want to say hi? Oh, God.
Come, sweetheart.
Oh, Lord.
Were we shouting?
Hi, Kian.
Hi, Kian.
How are you?
Were we shouting? Did we wake you up?
Oh, my goodness. We're so sorry.
Sorry.
So we should go to bed now again? Should we bring you to bed, Kian? You want to say hi quickly? No?
Oh.
Okay. All right, guys. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Well, with that in mind, and from all three of us, and obviously all four of us who are still sleeping, wish you a good night or good evening, and all the best. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, and just as do you want some water? Just as a last thing, so I've put a highlight on my Instagram for all of the resources and everything that I've shared since all of this started, basically. I've also created, in collaboration with another, Black female illustrator, I've created a few templates to kind of support Black businesses, Black creators, Black communities. So if you go on my Instagram, please use the templates to amplify our voices, and you can see some of the resources there as well. Okay, we're gonna
take this little one now to bed again.
Okay.
But thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks for tuning in.
All the best.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Say bye, Kiki.